Hi, this is Cheyenne from the Book Mermaid, and this is my spoiler-free review of Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. It's also my first book review ever. So let's go. If you hear a noise in the background, it is either A, my cat, or B, the air conditioner, because it's hot as balls. And while I love YouTube, I also love not being sweltering. So I originally picked up this book because Sam from Thoughts on Tomes literally would not stop talking about this series for months. And I mean months. She was gushing all over the place. So I picked it up, just like, I'll give it a try. And I listened to it on audiobook because that's what she recommended, and it was also kind of my first delve into adult fantasy. And I'm really glad I did because that audiobook is amazing. And this book is amazing. I loved it so much. So this series is a grimdark series, adult fantasy, and it follows a character named Nona. And Nona is a child, but this is not YA or a children's book. It is definitely an adult series, and it is definitely grimdark. It's not as grimdark as I've heard other people talk about some other books, because I will say there is some gore and like a lot of blood. There's a lot of blood and fighting in this book. I personally didn't have any kind of issue with it. I didn't think it was that bad, but if you're squeamish, probably should stay away. I will also say that there's one scene of animal abuse in it that I wasn't aware of, and had I known, I wouldn't have read it, because that's a very big no for me. And I actually ended up fast forwarding a little bit through it because I couldn't listen to it. I couldn't do it. But if I had known, I wouldn't have read the series. But because I've read the series, I'm gonna keep going on with it because I loved it that much. But that animal abuse is a hard pass for me. So I just wanted to let anybody else know, if it bothers you, there is one scene in it, and it's not fun. Like I said, it follows Nona, who is a child, and it goes up through her life until about preteens, early adolescence, and she is amazing. I ended up giving this book 4.5 out of 5 stars because of the world building that lost that 0.5. The world building is great. Don't get me wrong about that. It's amazing. However, in the beginning, it's a lot at once, and there's weird names, and there's a lot of things going on, and it's a little confusing, but I forgive it because it's so good. And Nona, the main character, the good thing about it is that she doesn't know a lot of the stuff that's going on, so a lot of the things that you need to know about the world are repeated because Nona is repeating them because she also doesn't know them, and she is connecting things she's learned to new things she's learning, so it's not difficult to follow as the book goes on, but in the beginning, it was a big mush. Sam from Thoughts on Tomes noted in her review that the magic system wasn't very laid out as to why things were happening, and I agree with that. There's a kind of a suspension of disbelief. You just kind of have to accept this is how the world is. I'm guessing we're going to learn more about how everything works as it goes on. It was a long audiobook. It was 19 hours. It was over 19 hours. I did finish it in record time. Holy cow, that audiobook was so good. There were times where I didn't think that it was one narrator narrating this whole book, because the voices that she does and the accents she does, they were so good, and it was so amazing. And I will probably read anything that this woman narrates from now on, because she's just, it was so good. So incredibly good. So this being my first real attempt at adult fantasy and also grimdark, I actually would recommend this book for a first series. I know it is a little confusing at first, but I think it's a good step because the story flows so well and it's very character driven. The world outside of it is you get enough of it to I think it's a good stepping stone. I wouldn't know for sure because this is the only one I've read. I have started Grey Sister literally immediately after I finished Red Sister. I think it was a fantastic foundation book. It was probably one of the best fantasy novels that I've read. That was the first book. It gave you just enough and not too much. I know, especially with YA, that there's a habit of kind of giving you too much information all at once throughout the whole book, not just in the beginning. This slowly got you there and makes you want more. It makes you want to know more. I found out with a lot of fantasy YA novels that I just kind of, I'm like, well, I know everything about the world. I can kind of guess what's going to happen next. With this, you didn't. There was a lot of, it was just, I have no words. for how good this is. The plot is that Nona, our sweet little bean, our sweet little violent, angry bean, who I will get to in a minute when I get to the characters, she has a lot of shit that goes on in the beginning, but eventually she's taken in by the nuns. And it's a school, it's a boarding school for magical assassin nuns. They're killer nuns, and the world basically fears them. Like, one of the beginning quotes in the book is something about, like, if you're gonna kill a nun or take on a nun, you must bring, like, a very sufficient army or something, like, just one of them. And I'm like, this is just gonna be about badass ladies. It's gonna be about badass ladies, and I am here. I am here for it. I am present. I am the first one who's arriving to class because I just, oh, it's so good. There's a lot of political intrigue, which I will admit, like, if it's too much political intrigue, I kind of back away. I'm like, I really don't, sometimes it's just too much. I need more than that. But all of the political intrigue that's going on is happening outside of the convent. So it's everything that's happening outside is affecting what's happening on the inside. You're getting just a taste of this atmosphere that the world is, not only inside the convent, but outside the convent. Another thing I've noticed with fantasy books is that if a character goes somewhere, they exist only at that place. In this book, Nona not only exists there, but she exists in the flashbacks and the flash forwards. Flash forwards were cool, also unique. And her experience and her knowledge is just, it's outside of just the convent. It's bigger than that. These are some of the most well-written characters I've ever read in my whole life. They're so well-rounded, and they all have distinct personalities. These personalities, they have loves and likes and dislikes. Some of them even have prejudices. And most of the characters in this book are women. I mean, it is a convent of magical assassin nuns, so you kind of assume there's going to be a lot of women, but even the characters who are outside of the convent, there's a few women out there as well. A lot of the really shitty characters are men, and I can honestly say that I can probably connect at least one man I've ever met in my life with any of the douche canoes that were in this book. And now we're getting to Nona. I love Nona. I love Nona because she's angry and she's suspicious, which is something that I personally can relate to. And she has this, like, unwavering loyalty to her friends, which is also something that I can relate to. She has this kind of blinded loyalty a lot of the time, which does occasionally make her unlikable, but I also understand, because I also have a blinding loyalty to the friends that I have in my circle. So I understand why she did it. I just, on occasion, wish she didn't. But it is such a core root of her personality, and just makes her so naive and, like, softer, but she's also, like, definitely a badass angry bitch, and she's wonderful. I love her. She's extremely interesting to, like, be in the head of and learn about her history. And you can kind of guess how she's going to react to things, but then she doesn't. And then sometimes you're like, she's definitely going to do this, but she does it in a different way, because she's like, nah, bitch, I'm smarter than that. Because she's not just all brute force. She's very impulsive, but she's also so smart about some stuff. Even the things that I don't like about her, I like to not like about her, if that makes sense. She's a very complex character, and she grows so much through this series, from her childhood to her early adolescence, and it's incredible how much she does. And you can see the slow growth. It's like a slow burn growth. It's great. Another thing that's great about the characters in this book is they have amazing relationships. The female friendships in this book are so complex and relatable and honest, and for once is not petty and gossipy and terrible and surface level friendships that we get in a lot of books. They're real female friendships. I was extremely satisfied with the story. 4.5 stars. The 0.5 taken away because it was confusing, and that one scene of animal abuse that I wasn't aware of. I really don't like the animal abuse, and if it wasn't so far along in the story, I probably would have DNF'd the book, because I can't handle it. I can't. But I was so enthralled in it, I just kind of moved past it and kept going. So it lost 0.5 for that. It would have lost more if certain things didn't happen, and the badassery that was in the book with my special nun children didn't happen, but it did. So and I love them so much. So that's it for my spoilery-free review of Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. Let me know down below if you've read it and what you thought, or if you're interested in it. I will also link Sam from Thoughts on Tomes review, which is the review that got me to read this book. Later on, you'll see a spoilery review, so once you read it, let me know. Bye.